The scripture tells us not only was Russia to be in the Middle East, but Saudi Arabia, Egypt and the Gulf states would not be antagonistic to Israel, but support Israel. That's strange. Support Israel. Well, look what it says. We've got Ezekiel 38 in front of us. Verse 13. Sheba, Dedan. Now, they are the more moderate Arab nations, unlike the Sunni Iraqi nations. Sheba, Dedan. They are those that inhabit the Saudi Arabian Peninsula. And the merchants of Tarshish. Well, we haven't time to look at it in any detail, but Scripture indicates to us that is Britain. And the young lions thereof, the Commonwealth nations. And they shall say unto thee, art thou come to take a spoil? So there will be a mild opposition to that presence of Russia in the Middle East. Well, there it is on the map. Here's the quote we looked at a few minutes ago. Sheba, Dedan, that area there. And the scripture tells us that it will be allied with Israel and with the Western nations. All of it is except for one small area now, Yemen down here. And I believe that will change somewhat in the near future. Well, let's look at what happened. Last year, exactly 70 years from the voting into the State of Israel, Trump, on his first foreign visit, went across to see the Saudi Arabians. And he asked them to form an alliance of nations that will oppose Iran toward their east. Iran, he says, they're developing weapons to wipe you out. And Saudi Arabia agreed with that. They knew that was true. So they signed up for a massive deal to buy weapons from America. But then Trump said to them, that's all very good, getting all that weaponry, but you won't be able to use it properly unless you get somebody skilled to help you. Make an alliance with Israel. And they agreed. So his next step, he left the Saudis, and then he flew straight into Israel and told Israel to ally themselves also with the Arab states of the Saudi Arabian Peninsula. Amazing. Here they have been enemies up until now. Look at this. Here's the Six-Day War, 1967. All the Arab nations around were opposed to Israel. They attacked it, didn't they? But now look, just in a blink, through their fear of Iran, they've swapped. Here's the Egyptian leader meeting Netanyahu publicly. Saudi Arabian leader, the young Saudi Arabian leader, flew into Israel, saw them there too. Amazing changes. The scripture also says it'll be Sheba, Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish. Well, here's Mrs. Tarshish, if you like to call it that. There's the Queen. And here's the leader, the new leader of Saudi Arabia, together. There they are, just only a few months ago. Everything is fitting together precisely. And it did so in a blink last year. Amazing. But now, there's real problems in that area right now. You see, here's the waterways out of this area. Amazingly, most of the world's oil comes out of that area that goes by sea. Over 40% of the world's oil tankers carry oil out of the Persian Gulf. They come out through that Straits of Hormuz. About 25% of it then goes up through Bab el-Mandeb into the Northern Hemisphere. Now, the situation is that Iran is talking about closing that Gulf, those waterways. They're talking about closing those waterways out of which 40% of the oil tankers, 25% of the world's oil comes. It's critical for the world's economy. And you know it too. You only have to look on the way home at the price of fuel. Only a month or two ago, the Minister of Energy wrote in Australia, he said, we're in a crisis. We've got 21 days of petrol. Now, we might have a bit more now, but at that time he had only 3 weeks reserves. He said this, we've got 44 oil tankers at sea at any one moment, obtaining crude oil, taking it to refineries, having it refined and brought into Australia. He said, we're in crisis. If we had a war, he said we couldn't go to war. We wouldn't have enough fuel to maintain our ships for only a few weeks, that's all. Or our planes in the air. So I believe we're raising the price probably at this stage with an endeavour to be able to buy in more into Australia. Why worry? We've been able to run on 3 weeks for a long time. Not anymore. November about the 4th. America is talking about boycotting Iran. Totally boycotting it. Telling any country if they buy anything from it, they will boycott that country. To make sure Iran doesn't develop any more nuclear weapons. They're trying to bring that pressure on them. And Iran is saying, you do that, we will close that waterway. We have got 6,000 sea mines, the 20-odd kilometre width of that waterway there, the Straits of Hormuz, we'll close it. We'll close it. There it is. There's the Straits of Hormuz, and we've got these 6,000 mines. And only a few months ago, only a few weeks ago, they were saying we will act. And the USA is playing dangerous game, he said, if they boycott us. Well, America has already begun to act. September the 12th, only a day or two ago, they sent in their aircraft carrier. They sent in some of the most advanced aircraft in the world into that area to try and develop, to try and protect that waterway or those waterways. All right? So they're really very, very worried over what's going on. Well, what do we know about that? Well, we know well about that because it's been well written by our writers. Dr. Thomas, in Elpis Israel, in Exposition of Daniel, in Eureka, in the Herald, way back in 1850s, wrote extensively on the conflict that would happen in the Persian Gulf. And he said this, to just prescience, and if you wanted to read a little of it, later on I just brought along my Exposition of Daniel, can have a read of it in a little bit more detail later. Britain and its young lions shall take maritime possession of the Gulf of Persia and the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb and the Red Sea to Suez. Why? He didn't know. In those days when he wrote 170 years ago, it was sailing ship days. He didn't know what was going on there, but he knew the Bible said so. Now we know because the oil's coming out of there. It's critical that we keep those waterways open. And he says, America, Britain, the Commonwealth countries will act to keep that Gulf open. And he says that will happen at the time when Russia is in Syria and has control of Damascus. He points that out in these articles. How accurate is the Scripture? How accurate is the Scripture? And how accurate has been that interpretations that we've had from our writers long, long ago, 170 years ago.